Welcome everybody. My name is Susie Hufstader. I am Advocacy Manager with Binky Brown. We are bringing you a new 3-part series on family biking. This is brought to you with funding from Spare the Air Youth. And the focus is basically on hearing from families about their experiences riding with their whole family. So we're sort of starting from the youngest group and going up to sort of planning family rides with your whole group. So this one is about carrying your kids on your bike with you. So we'll see a bunch of different sort of cargo and trailer setups. Then the second one will be about teaching children and young adults how to ride bikes for the first time on 2 wheels. And then we'll do a third part about route planning and the sort of joys and challenges of biking with your whole family. So welcome to all our panelists, Kristi, Binky, Melissa, and Leilani, all of whom are awesome sort of Binky Spay volunteers, instructors, and Binky Spay adjacent bike leaders of their own. So I'll just let everybody go around and introduce themselves. Kristi, can you start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Kristi Marleau. I live in Dublin. I have 2 kids. They are now 11 and 13.
Great. Binky?
Hi, I'm Binky Brown and I live in West Oakland. I have 1 kid and she is 13.
Melissa?
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Avery and I live here in Fremont and I have 3 kids and their ages are 10, 9, and 5. Somebody just had a birthday, so I had to remember that.
All right.
Should I go? Hi, I'm Leilani. I live in the Fairview neighborhood of Hayward, and my kids are 12, 5, and 22 and a half months.
Awesome. So to get started, I'm going to share my screen and we'll run through a quick slideshow with everybody's bike setup. So just give me a second here. All right, so we can just jump right in. Melissa, do you want to go first to share about your 2 trailers?
So I have 2 trailers, but the one I've had the longest is my Burley Bee, the one in the yellow. That carries 2 kids, and I researched the trailers, and it's one of the cheapest trailers that you could get. And I would carry both of these trailers on my mountain bikes, though I no longer have that bike, and I use like it's a regular like city bike, just a regular bike that I have. But the other one is the one on the left, the Weehoo, we got that so we could go bike packing or go on like single track trails, because we city bike, we road bike, we mountain bike, all of that. And what I liked about this one is it has the pedals for the kids so they can assist or they can feel like they're assisting. It does help. It does help. And we had attached a basket on the back so we could carry our dog. We have a little dog, so sometimes the dog comes with us too. So so I would carry so the Weehoo carries 1 and the Burley Bee carries 2, but it's a tight 2. So those are my 2 types of trailers, and I like them both because I was scared of falling over, and if I fall over, the Weehoo can tip over too, but the Burley Bee is the one that's the most stable. You can fall over and the trailer doesn't, because I would carry my little ones since they were very, very young in there. So I wanted, if I hurt myself, the child wouldn't flip over.
Do you have anything else, Melissa?
I said I can keep going more if you want, but that's an overview of my 2 setups that I would have and I currently use the Burley Bee still more to carry my son or my dog or grocery shopping versus the Weehoo. The Weehoo, we used it more for outdoors, for like off-roading and mountain biking and stuff like that, versus the Burley Bee.
Great, thank you. All right, Leilani.
I had to unmute myself. Is it just the one slide, Susie, or the other sides included? I wasn't sure which one.
I think I just have this one slide.
Okay, so I've had different setups depending on the amount of kids I have, the terrain that I've lived, how the ride feels. This is my most recent setup. In the past, I've had a tandem trailer. That was when I had 1 kid and I was living in Fremont where it was relatively flat. And again, it was similar to Melissa about having a low center of gravity. As I had more kids, I had to upgrade because the tandem trailer only fits 1. So this is an Extracycle Longtail cargo bike. And you know, the considerations of terrain now are different for me because I live in Hayward where it's quite hilly. So I have one fitted with an e-motor. It's an e-bike. What I like about the bike is that it still feels like you're riding a regular bike with a long tail. And because I'm hilly, some of the other kinds of bike configurations didn't really work for me, like even though I liked them, like the bucket bike type of thing. So with 2 kids, there's the age and the weight. The drag and load is about anywhere between 50 to 120 pounds because the bike itself is about 35, and then you have to add on kid weight and everything else that you're hauling. So for me, the considerations are, you know, the center of gravity and the stability for loading and unloading the kids. So I have this one with a double-sided kickstand, and you know, the way I was able to afford it was to do a lot of hustles on Craigslist. I lucked out. We bought this maybe 3 years ago when I had number 2, 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago when we had the second kid, and was able to find a lot better deals when you go into the deep east suburbs of the Bay Area. And so you see 2 setups with the Extracycle. One is was from last year, almost a year ago, when Kai was just a baby, and you see him, he's on the handlebar. So for this, I was kind of hesitating to include this one because with this setup with the baby on the handlebars, I actually had a major accident. So the bike toppled, and because the center of gravity was higher, I wasn't able to correct. And you see the baby's right in my chest. So I also just didn't have the torque to be able to stop the bike from tumbling. And it went over and I tore my shoulder ligament. So, you know, it took me about a year, you know, almost half a year to a year to recover from that injury. And what I really learned from that is reducing the handlebar weight is really important for stability. Especially because, you know, upper body strength for me is, you know, my body strength is in my legs and my hips. And so that's the huge thing. And also because I have a shorter torso, it kind of put it right in my chest and made it a little bit more difficult to ride. So I think that's the main thing. It's just, you know, the setup now, I have them in the back. Liam, who is the middle kid, he's 5 years old. He's a little bit closer to me to put the center of gravity more towards the center of the bike. I think that's it I have to say about that.
Great, thank you, Leilani. All right, Kristi, do you want to run through all 3 of these?
Sure. So the bike on the left is my Madsen, my bucket bike. I purchased this bike, or actually my husband took up a collection from every family member. we have, and bought this for me after I expressed interest in getting it for my birthday in, I think this is my 10th year of owning this bike. And I had not been on a bike in 10 years before I got this bike. So I didn't even have a chance to test ride it because it was only available online. So on a whim, I bought this cargo bike. It holds 4 kids. There's 4 seat belts, so you can fit 4 skinny butts in the bucket. The front rack is very handy for carrying all your other junk. Let's see, what else about that bike? So I didn't really put a lot of thought into what the options were for me at that time, other than this is the cheapest cargo bike on the market, I'll take it. But I'm very happy with this choice. I still ride this bike today, not so much with kids in it, but with groceries and dogs and things like that. So later on, my husband wanted his own cargo bike. So he ended up with the Bullet, which is in the middle, which is like the front bucket bike. And as you can see, also can hold many children. But he is a lot stronger of a rider than I am. And I don't feel super comfortable riding that bike. I can ride it, but the steering is weird and it just doesn't work with my body purport. Because again, like Leilani said, my strength is not in my arms, it's in my legs. And anytime I've ever dropped a bike, it was when I was walking it, not riding it. Like holding it up is challenging with my arms. But my husband loves riding this bike, and I know other women who have bikes like this that also love them. It's just not for me. And then the third picture is my folding bike with a little kids, it's not a great picture, but there's like a kid seat, like on an arm that comes out like this, with a kid seat on it, where the kid sits between your legs. And that is super handy for going on trips. I think I'm wearing a huge backpack in this picture because we were on our way to catch BART, to catch Amtrak, to go to Disneyland. So those are just some of the ways I've carried kids on bikes.
Awesome, thank you. Hey, Kristi, how big of a kid do you think can sit on that little seat?
That particular kid, last time I rode with him on there was probably 10 or 11, but he's kind of short. I think the limiting factor is like being able to see over their head. Yeah.
Kristi, are any of these bikes e-bikes?
Oh yeah, so the bucket bike was not originally an e-bike, and after I started using the bike for like everything and the kids started getting bigger, I added a Bionics pedal assist system to it like 3 years after I had it. And the Bullet also has Bionics on it, which they are no longer in business, but there are lots of electric retrofit options, or new bikes these days. Most cargo bikes are sold as electric, I think, in my shopping experience.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Kristi. And Binky.
Yes. I don't see, I guess I'll just talk about it. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I started with, is actually the free radical extra cycle. So I don't even think they make that anymore, where you could like add it on to your own bike. So and that was the first one that I had really that I had done. And I really liked it. It was really helpful. Like, yeah, me and my kid went everywhere on that thing. But I did also get a trailer. My issue, I mean, I love the trailer. And you know, if you'll notice the message on the trailer, that was actually necessary to write. I had like a really scary incident that actually had other people calling the police from what happened, because I think people just assumed I didn't have a kid in there. And so, you know, I mean, I've got lots of tattoos, and, you know, I think people just assumed there was not a child in there, and they would take way too many risks. So I put that on the back when I had her in there. And I feel that it actually helped, because at the most people would slow down to read it because they're like, what does this say on the back? But I like the trailer, and I think it's funny that everyone else kind of says, like, even if they don't ride with their kids, they still use them, because cargo bikes in the trailers are so very, very useful even afterwards. But I did have some of the things, like with the trailer, I liked the stability. I didn't like having that it was kind of two things. So like one of my major issues with having a kid and traveling around like that was I live on the second story, and I don't have any first story storage. So everything I have to bring down a full flight of stairs, whether it's the cargo bike or the bike and the trailer. And it was more convenient for me to use the extra cycle, because it was just one piece of equipment to bring up or down the stairs. Whereas the trailer, like I said, was really nice for stability. But like, I mean, I could pack the extra cycle full of groceries just to avoid having to carry two different things up and down the stairs. But then the trailer was nice for things like when I had my kid and my dog. And so it was, and I, like I said, and I ended up selling the extra cycle, which I ended up regretting, but another family is happily enjoying it right now. But I still have the trailer. And yeah, I bought the trailer for $50 from somebody off of Craigslist, and like rode my bike to this, you know, because they were like the same thing, like their kids had outgrown it. And so I bought it and I attached it to my bike in their garage and rode it home, and have had it for, yeah, almost 10 years. It's great. The Burley is amazing. So yeah, I would say that, and then I think one of the other interesting things too about the extra cycle is I have, my kid, I mean, I'm sure everyone else experienced this too, but like I never had, because of how big my kid was, she never had like a kid seat. She just sat on the back. And kids aren't really aware of their weight shifting. Like, so it's kind of funny, because you can always tell, you like, stop messing with something. And she's like, how do you know? And I'm like, because I can feel like, you know, the weight shifting. So that's, you know, you have to talk with your kid, I think, a little bit about like, please keep your hands and arms like inside while we're moving. But yeah, that I would say I definitely, for just like regular trips, like not doing anything like extensive or like carrying anything, I loved the cargo, the Longtail cargo. That was definitely my preferred method with my kid. But yeah, I guess that's about it.
Awesome. All right. So that was our sort of initial overview. I did want to say, for anybody who's watching, you can pop questions into the Q&A or the chat box anytime. But I'll just sort of start doing a go round. I think, Binky, that was actually a perfect segue into this topic about the fact that children are people and they have like needs and things going on. I mean, I could go around specifically, but does anybody have any initial thoughts about like what kind of maybe training is the wrong word, but what kind of sort of routine setting needs to happen as far as getting on, unloading, unloading, and being on the bike? I know, Leilani, you have a whole like routine with the 2 seats that I've seen before.
Yeah, I mean, I think a double kickstand for a cargo bike is a must. I don't know, there's a weird culture in the US around kickstands, like bikes don't come with kickstands. It's kind of bizarre. And then at the time when I bought my cargo bike, or no, I had bought the kickstand for a tandem trailer, which is like it's a little single wheel attachment that you put on in the kid bikes. So it was nice for the extra boost. But yeah, I had bought it back then, and I had to have it imported from Europe because they weren't really selling things like that back then. But yeah, having that stability, I think it's hard, a little bit hard with the Longtail. Like I find I cannot put the kickstand on while I'm straddling the bike. I have to get off. So you have this precarious moment where you're holding the handlebars, you have one foot on the ground and the other foot is trying to make its way around. And because the kid is behind you, you can't go over the saddle, you have to go over the bar. So I think some of the newer designs that are coming out now with step through design are much more friendly in terms of people who have shorter torsos and shorter legs, and just giving that kind of stability that you need to step over. And then from there, I'll have to use the seat of the bike or the frame itself to kind of haul that thing up onto. And the kickstand that I have now with this bike is all hacked. I lucked out in finding a Craigslist deal where some guy had made a custom bike and he made his own kickstand with little bar ends and things like that. But yeah, it takes a lot of oomph to get it up on the kickstand.
Kristi, did you have to do any training about the bucket, or did you kind of pop them in there?
I did just pop them in there, but as they got more comfortable, they got more active back there. It definitely have, you know, it's like, stop fighting. Like they were like full on wrestling in the bucket. And I have on multiple trips to school made one of them get out because they're like on a trail going up the last hill to school. One of them get out and walk the rest of the way because like they will not stop squirming around and, you know, hitting each other. It's not cool. So that's a big thing, is just like, please be still. You guys weigh a lot and you're flinging me around. Snacks are good for keeping them calm.
Totally. We have a question from Christine. Tips for keeping a 4-year-old safe on a cargo bike. I'm considering an extra cycle, but have some worries about being wiggly. Have any of you used the bars or the railings on the extra cycle, or any other Longtail, or any other tips about small 4-year-olds?
I haven't used those, but I would say I also, like I said, I got mine when cargo bikes were just kind of being popular. So some of the features that happened, that they have when I started doing it, I would have loved those rails. It definitely, it adds a little bit different to probably getting on and off, but my kid learned how to balance, but I would have, if I had had the option going in, I would have gotten the rails.
And you're a mechanic, so maybe you can help answer this question, but I believe they can come on and off. So like when the kid gets big enough to hold on or something, then you can take them off.
That's the nice thing, they're adjustable. And then I ended up getting the handlebars in, like off of the seat post, and my kid liked that a little bit, but she got used to holding on, so she didn't really need anything. But I felt more comfortable even just having the handlebars. But yeah, you can take them off and you know, and switch it around as they, you know, don't need things or your needs change too.
Yeah, I've also had those handlebars in the back, and we're considering getting the hoopty now because my son is the 5-year-old now, he's still a little bit traumatized by the accident that we had. So he feels like there's nothing protective around him. And he doesn't have things to hold on to when we go over potholes and speed bumps. So he has to cling on to the bottom of the seat because those Yep seats are very minimalist. So we've been considering getting the hoopty, or trying to hack it with PVC, because the hoopty is like, I think it's, in some ways, it's just a visual safety thing versus well, I mean, I guess if they're not in child seats, it is an actual safety thing because they can't slide off. But so we've been considering doing PVC pipes or something else like that, just to give him that's something to hold on to. The other thing I was going to say too for the Yep seat is the way they are, they're only a 2-point harness, or 3-point harness, where it clips in like this. So I did want to add either a chip clip right here, or I took it from another car seat that he grew out of to add kind of the chest clip, because I had an incident where he wanted to take a nap and he didn't want to get in his seat, and he was flailing around so much that he actually came out of the kind of two straps that they had like that. And I was just like, if I just had a chip clip with me at that time, I could have just clipped them in. But the other thing I think was with a 4-year-old is napping is a huge thing with the littles. I haven't quite figured out that perfect hack. I don't know if others of you have figured something out, but like when they're in these child seats and they are sleeping, their neck is just like, and so I've tried like with Velcro and, you know, those airplane kind of cushion type things, but that's another thing that's a little bit tricky too, is when they fall asleep.
So my experience was that I actually biked to make them nap, but I had the trailer. So, or when, because I primarily would bike to and from school to pick them up. So my setup's a little bit different. Like I have my bike and my trailer, and then I would usually have 1 or 2 kids following behind me on their own bikes. So the trailer itself would actually give them like a focal point to stay in a straight line and follow. So that was, I would always say, you know, babies in the trailer, I'm like, just stay behind the trailer. So that was a really good like focal point for them for the other kids. This is more of like biking with kids in one of the other discussions, but my baby would always fall asleep in the trailer. So at least they have the rest in the back, so it would be a 5-point harness, and they would rest back. And then I would either like put a towel next to them, or like the pillows that they have, like what Leilani was talking about was a pillow. And like I said, sometimes I would purposely go ride my trailer to actually make them go to sleep. But that was one of the biggest things, because we are like, I would bike commute for to and from school or wherever, but we're very big recreational bike riders and mountain biking or road biking. And we want to go on these long rides, and our kids would always fall asleep. So that was my issue about like, I've seen the extra cycles and all those types of bikes like that, but I knew for our lifestyle, the trailer would work better because we would spend like the whole day biking, and I know my kid would take a nap. So the trailer was the best option for us. And even in my WeHo picture, it has a rest on the back. So I think even in that picture, my son is asleep. He's asleep and his head is kind of hanging, but at least he has the back to rest his head on. You can see it right there. And I even thought about, you know, like finding something to like strap the back of his helmet right there to it, so he wouldn't be like moving around, but at least he had the rest. And then if you look at the pedals on the feet, they also have straps, so their feet aren't actually dragging, because I think his feet don't drag. But if a kid, that WeHo can hold a child, it says up to 9 years old. And I did actually try it out on my daughter earlier this year, because she had a tonsillectomy and she couldn't bike anywhere. And we were just gonna bike down the street to go get ice cream. And she didn't want to sit in. I was like, you can squeeze in the trailer. And she was like, I know, I'm gonna feel like a baby. So I put her in the WeHo to try it out, and it actually did work. And she rode in it, and she could pedal. But like it has straps for the feet, so like when the kids do fall asleep, their feet aren't dragging, or if you hit a bump, it doesn't fall off or anything like that. But the head still kind of bobbles around with the WeHo, but with the trailer, not so much. At least it can lean up against something. But I'm like really unbalanced. Like I'll like fall over just standing up. So I'm really scared about the weight on the bicycle for you know, that's why I was like, I'm not even going there, because I'm not confident with a bunch of weight on it. So that's why I went with the ones that attach to the bike. And I have tried the other trailers where the trailer, the center of gravity is, I don't know what they're called, the tag-along trailers. I think that's what they're called, but the bike is actually higher. And I tried it out once on my friend's bike, and I was like, no, I can't do this, because the center of gravity was like way too high, and I'm really petite. I'm only 5 feet tall, so like I couldn't handle where the balance was. So I was just like, I'm going with trailers, whether it was the WeHo or the other one.
Kristi, did you have something that you were gonna add?
Oh yeah, I was thinking back to the 4-year-old question, and I'm sure this is probably standard. Like for a while, we had one of the very first Yuba Boda Bodas ever made, and it didn't have any protection for, so like it's a mid-tail, so like an extra cycle but shorter. Didn't have any protection to keep kids' feet out of the spokes. And we had an incident like where I was like flying down an overpass hill and my 2-year-old stuck his foot in the wheel and it like ripped his shoe off and threw it into the middle of the road. It took a bit of skin with it. It was bad. I'm sure they've improved the safety of these since the first version, but if not, I would, if it's like an option to get the wheel guards, I would get the wheel guards. Also for 4-year-olds, I've seen like if you have a toy or a snack or something that you don't want them flinging into the road, to like use one of those pacifier clips to like clip it to the seat or the hoopty or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen parents like tie their kid's head to the seat with like a jacket sleeve. So when they fall asleep, they can't nod. Yeah, so there are lots of tips you see on the internet.
Yeah, can I ask, does anyone have any sort of tips or insights about parking not at home? I mean, we can't talk about at home, but I think what I was meaning was more about the destinations. Do you have any, like, did that go into your consideration of what type of cargo you chose? And if not, just have you had any sort of like good or bad experiences? I ask, I guess, because one of the big pros is that it's maybe easier than car parking depending on where you live, but maybe not. So if anybody has any thoughts on that.
Well, I have the most stealable. I have the most stealable setup here. So that was mine and my husband's like major concern was we've known a lot of people got their trailers stolen. So we would the way I connect my bike, I guess, is I take 2 U-locks and I have a 6-foot long cable, and then the other one's like a 3-foot one, and I just make it super complicated, and I don't go anywhere. Like it's only like to go to the store. I don't go anywhere for a super long time where I can't bring in my trailer, but I do carry the huge U-lock and then a smaller U-lock and then cables, and I just make it a big tangle mess in there. So, you know, if someone did try to steal it, it would take them a little while and someone would probably pay attention. The WeHo is more difficult to steal because you actually have to put it in the seat post. So you have to take off the seat post, and it's really heavy. The WeHo is, for me, it was more accessible so we could go on different mountain biking trails and stuff like that because it's a single wheel, but it's really heavy. So I don't think it would be more difficult to steal that. We've never had any issues with that. And then with the Burley, I was always, even when I had all of the wires and everything, like a tire would be free to be stolen, I guess, because it's just a push and a pull and you can take it off. But we've never had any issues parking that around Fremont. I always carry the locks and just make a giant tangle mess with it. So, and then since I am usually riding with my other kids, I put like their bikes next to like the wheels of the trailer, and like we just make it a big giant tangle mess of all of our 4 or 5 bikes with the trailers with the cables, and it's like we would have to be gone for a very long time for someone to try to steal it. But it's also space-wise, it's difficult a little bit. But I also drive, our car is the world's biggest SUV in Fremont. So we try not to use it at all. But it's, since bike parking is kind of not readily accessible here in Fremont, sometimes if we go, let's say, I don't know, to Whole Foods, their bike parking, we take up the whole thing. And like my trailer might be hanging and I'm like, okay, well, let's put it here. Sometimes we've even taken it apart and folded it up and tied it all up together if there was just no room, if it was going to be hanging it out. So that's the other part that the trailer and all the bikes have forced me to do, was like I needed to like learn my bike. Like I had to actually learn how to disassemble parts of my bike, disassemble parts of the trailer. You know, if I was like, why does it feel so hard that I'm riding, you know, pulling this trailer? Noticed that my PSI on my wheels was too low. The extra, you know, 10 air pressure in the thing really makes the cargo, the trailer feel lighter. So it really forced me to learn the mechanics of my bike and the trailer and the kids' bikes and know what tools I needed to bring, because the kids' bikes had different ones and all of that. So it really did force me to learn more about my bike and like where to secure my bike in, like where actually on my bike, and then where when I go somewhere, I'm like on Google Maps looking to see if there's a bike rack or if there's a tree or a signpost that I can put my giant mess of bicycles there. So planning, it made me plan a lot.
Any other
Yes.
thoughts on that one?
And I definitely have very strong opinions about bike racks and what is a good bike rack and a good bike rack placement. And it's like, just put the staples, follow the directions of how far away from a wall they should be. And because I have a hard time, like the bucket bike, like when you put the kickstand, I think the extra cycle same, like you come backwards. So if you can't get close enough to the wall to come backwards and still be near the bike rack, you can't lock it to anything, and it can be a pain. But hopefully cities are catching on to like what is a good bike rack and how to put them in right.
I wanted to go off of kind of what Melissa was saying, which is that's kind of more my experience, where one, yes, with the cargo bikes, like they don't fit in those spaces. And then when you have the trailer, like I had to just fold it every time. And then I think the other kind of complication, like you're saying, is all of the locks. Like with the cargo bike, it was at least like one, maybe two, you know, and you could find, and even if you get like a big cable, yeah, you can wrap it around a tree. But when it's, when you have like a tiny little bike rack and then you have your bike, yeah, maybe another bike, and then the trailer, like I always ended up, I would just do it every time. I would just fold the wheels inside the trailer and then lock it some crazy way, and had like two long chains like that were heavy. So of course that's, you know, something else you have to carry. But yeah, because I was not trying to have my stuff missing when I came back with my kid, and definitely needed it. But so once again, it was like, I preferred the extra cycle because to me, it was easier to carry one thing, to lock one thing. But I know my kid preferred the trailer because she could just sit there and draw and play with her toys a little bit easier. But yeah, those are definitely what you have to do. And like you said, learning, you have to learn your bike because you got to make sure you put it back together. So it definitely takes a little bit more knowledge, I think, to do that.
Hey, Binky, did you have the trailer and the extra cycle at the same time and switch off, or was that like different phases of life?
Yeah, no, I did have them. I have them at the same time. I would just pick which one made sense. And sometimes I ended up having both together, but it was generally when I had to carry a lot of stuff. So I might have my kid on the extra cycle and then actually have the trailer attached to the back of the extra cycle and then have more stuff in there. And of course that was even more stuff, you know, trying to lock that up as well. So that was a thing. But yeah, I had them at the same time, and I would go back and forth depending on what I needed to do.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just more of the same that everyone's been saying. Sometimes it takes longer to lock up your bike than the actual errand itself. Yeah, everyone's laughing because you've been through it. So yeah, because the extra cycle is so long and bike racks suck so enormously, I usually just do like a signpost. And, you know, I used to do cables and a U-lock, but recently maybe I'm deceiving myself. I've just gotten really lazy and I just use a U-lock now. I think just the weight is just so much because I'm hauling 120 pounds. And so those locks really add up. So there is a business opportunity in there for all you designers and engineers and product developers out there, is creating a light lock. Oh my Lord.
Yeah, totally. Can I ask for a go round on what you think that your favorite thing or the best thing about biking with kids is? You know, there's obviously a lot of challenges and a lot of considerations, like whether you want to share why you decide to bike with your kids or what their favorite thing about it is, just something along those lines. I'm going to call on Kristi first.
Okay. My favorite thing, besides, well, there are a few things. I like getting exercise while I'm running my errands. Like when my kids were little, I felt like I didn't have time to, you know, work out or whatever. I'm not really into that. But just like riding them to school was plenty to keep me in shape. I also think that like doing things by bike with kids like kind of like slows things down a little bit, like not overcommitting to activities and sports and things like that. It's just like, this is what we can do in our biking circle, and that's what we're gonna do. So it keeps things chill, I guess. And just being outside, it's good.
Nice. Go ahead, Melissa.
I think my favorite thing has been seeing the progression from them being babies in the trailer to like they're bike racers now. And it's like I taught them how to ride a bike. You know, they went from trailer to me teaching them how to ride a bike, and like I have it in my mind ingrained when they're like, oh, you know, they learned how to ride a bike. And it's just been the progression of that, and then are like all of our thousands of mini adventures of just, you know, biking to school. And I'm like, let's cut through this field and go home. And we found like a lizard, you know, that wouldn't have happened if we were in our car. And then also the conservation side of it. You know, we were watching a documentary and my kids, they were watching about like some seal in the North Pole, and they said, you know, all of these in 2018, all these seals, you know, they all perished because of climate change. It was the heat was too much, and you know, and just, you know, telling like, well, that's why we try to reduce as much as we can from driving in the car, and that's why we ride our bikes to school. You know, it's the little things that we do that add up. So it's like ingrained in them, you know, and just having fun when, you know, going to go get ice cream or pizza or, you know, going to the store. It's all these little things that, you know, wouldn't have happened if we were on our bikes. And then, you know, seeing people in cars, like they're like waving at us saying hi or like good job. It's it's fun for them to see the things that, you know, they wouldn't have seen when we were in a car, and they get to know their actual community, you know which way to go. And I remember there was a kid in like Hayward that got lost, and he like found his way home by looking at, you know, places of where to go. So now I test my kids when we're biking to and from school. I'm like, how do you get home? Like if something ever happened, you never know. But it's fun. And then that's just like in our city. And then when we go biking for, you know, in the mountains or wherever, Coyote Hills, you know, they learn to appreciate where they have good experiences. So, I mean, I think for me, that's the best. And as well as like, all my kids have really hated their car seat. So it was like very traumatic for me to put them in their car. Like my daughter would throw up every time I strap her in her car seat. So I was like, no, we're going to go in a car. We're going to go in our bikes, because it was just too much for me. You know, I couldn't handle that. So it was really bad. She would, every time I'd strap her to her car seat, I would have to have like a bucket or something to catch her throwing up. I don't know why she would do that, but she just hated that. But the strap in the trailer wouldn't that wouldn't bother her. So I don't know, but but that, I mean, I love biking around town with the kids. I love using all the new infrastructure that the city of Fremont is putting in. It's amazing. And, you know, one of the, Susie knows, the Walnut Avenue is one of my daughter's favorite. It's a raised bike path. So that's her new favorite trail to go, or road to go anywhere. So it's fun. It's been fun going from, you know, trailer. I still use a trailer a little bit, but now the kids riding behind me and just enjoying life on a bike is really fun with the kids. So, and they get tons of exercise.
Binky, do you have anything to add about that?
I mean, basically just the same as what everybody else is saying. It's really fun. And then I did miss riding with my kid when she kind of got too big, because I had to switch to recreational exercise, like Kristi was saying. It definitely keeps you in shape. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a different experience. It's fun because it, you know, and especially having gone from like walking with my kid to biking with my kid, and then eventually I got a car. Like, it was, you experience more. I mean, walking is the most experience, but it also takes a really long time. And so biking, yeah, you can go on a mini adventure. You're in nature, all the things that they're being exposed to that they would not otherwise. And then you too, you know, it's just a fun experience. Like, yeah, I mean, that was kind of one of the sad things where I was like, my kid, like, you know, like I said, I mean, you know, just with where we live and all of that, it's not the safest of streets out here, but, you know, I do miss riding with my kid, because it was just fun and easy to just go somewhere and you just take him, pop him on the bike, and then, you know, and have a good time. So that, yeah, I mean, everything everybody said, it's true. It's fun.
Did you want to chime in too, Leilani?
You know, I'm not going to add anything new. It's the joy and the freedom, and being able to transport yourself in different places. For me, biking as a teenager, that was my only way of getting around. That and walking, and biking by far was the fastest. And, you know, I commuted in college and while I was working too. So it's just this ability to be free, and then having, you know, being able to experience nature and the cityscape in a different way too. You discover new parts of your city when you're biking. When we were in Fremont, the Alameda Creek Trail was just an amazing way to just cut through everything and get right to the bay. And I remember taking my daughter when we had just the one biking in Yosemite, and there's just secret bike trails in Yosemite that don't exist you could just cut the car lines and just zoom past them and see different things and be there faster. So I think just all those different things, all those things. Oh, and then my sister just got my son a bubble machine. We haven't put it on the bike yet because they used all the bubble juice before I could even put it on the bike. And I don't know where the batteries are, and the battery case cover's missing, but you know, that's the other thing too, is just not only adding joy to our own bike ride, but adding joy to everybody else around us while we're biking.
That is rad, and I can't wait to see
Really
pictures
cool.
of that.
There's actually a free, if you have access to a 3D printer, I don't, but the Hayward Library has one day when it reopens in the new world. But you know, there is actually somebody designed one that's wind powered that you can print out. So,
Wow. So we have a question in the Q&A, and folks who are watching, feel free to start dropping your questions into the chat in the Q&A. Asha asks, what app or site do you use to find kid-friendly and trailer-friendly routes? Does anybody have any? I can also contribute to that one if folks want, but go ahead and offer your tips on route planning.
I use Strava, but because you can see elevations and grades, and you can see what other people have ridden. I also use just Google Maps, see where there's bike trails, and then I myself I'm trying to put together like family-friendly routes and places to bike with in Fremont. I've got a couple up on my website, but I'm trying to make it, I haven't written in a long time, but I'm trying to put it all together in one big thing for, you know, for families to ride around, you know, in Fremont. But I mean, I know there's other people who write about family-friendly bike routes and stuff like that. On mine, I do put like whether it's, you know, you can take a trailer or how hard it is, beginners or whatever. That's just on my own. But for me, when I try to find stuff, I look on Strava because then you can see elevation. Because elevation is, or like the incline of, you know, streets and roads is what really affects. You can feel every single incline when you're pulling weight. So, and I've never ridden anything assisted. Like none of my bikes are e-bikes or anything. So for me, like gearing and just muscle power pulling, like I too myself have pulled like one day I was biking with my friend and I had 2 toddlers and like backpacks and stuff. We were trying to calculate how much I was pulling and it was over 100 pounds, you know? And I'm like, this is just a 5-mile bike ride. It was a really hard 5-mile bike ride because I'm pulling it. That's why I also used a mountain bike because I had gearing on it. But like, I would just use, you know, those apps and plan out my route so I could see how much elevation it was especially with the trailer and anything like that. I don't know what else everybody else uses, but that's what I've used.
Can you type that in the chat? I hadn't heard of that one before. Thanks. I mean, I've just been using Google Maps, and I recently like did a bunch of gigs and then saved up money and upgraded the e-motor on my bike. There's this guy in Castro Valley that does it and powered bikes. So I have a hub motor, or no, mid-range. I used to have a hub motor, which is the front wheel, and that would skid out on big hills. And so now I have a mid-range, which is right where you're gonna hate me, Binky, that big gear thingy, the big spiky gear thing. I don't know the name of that one. But where that is, that's where the motor is. So that helps a lot too, because I live up someplace steep where I was feeling like I was having a heart attack every time I'd go up with kids. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kristi.
I would say I definitely, if I'm going to a city that I am totally unfamiliar with, definitely Google Maps and like using Street View to look at like, would I feel safe on this road? And if not, find a different way around. But yeah, Google Maps and Street View.
If you're also looking for just like recreational trails, I've been using, because we mountain bike a lot, it's called Mountain Biking Project, MTB. I think it's, I don't know if it through REI did it, but it's MTB project. And it actually gives you like, you know how skiing has, I don't ski, but like they have like ratings like black diamonds and whatever, but they actually give a rating on trails. Green is usually the easiest, and it'll tell you if it's like a fire road, a single track, or a double track trail. Because that was my biggest issue with the trailer, is that, you know, sometimes we've been on mountain biking trails and we're like, oh crap, this is a single track and we have a wide trailer, and we have beaten that trailer. I think that's like my second cover and windows. You can reorder from Burley, but like we've beaten that thing and it has not fallen apart. So there's way more, like the picture that you have for the event, the Thule something, that's kind of an expensive one, and I didn't want to get that one because we didn't know how we were going to, you know, use it. And I was like, oh, let's just go for the cheapest, you know, kind of one. But we've beaten the Burley quite a bit, and on taking it on single track when it's not supposed to be on there, and it's survived. So but we have had to reorder pieces. But anyways, mountain biking project, I'll put it in here too. Is it going just to the panelists or my chat here? I'm not sure if it's going to everyone, or else I'll just put it in the chat. But
Yeah,
anyways,
I
it's
I can copy and paste it.
okay. It's the mountain biking project gives you also the like the elevation and the details of certain trails, like if this is a beginner trail or not, if you're looking for non-street trails.
Nice. Yeah, I would definitely echo what Kristi said about looking on the street view for a street you might not be familiar with. Google Maps directions is pretty good, but just sometimes they'll make decisions for you about elevation or like how stressful the street is. And if you know the city, you sometimes look at it as like, okay, Broadway in Oakland has a bike lane, but if you go around over Pill Hill, then you don't have to be in traffic. And so those types of trade-offs aren't always reflected in Google. And so it's not maybe the most efficient thing to do, but here in the East Bay, almost every city has some sort of Facebook group that's got like bike people in it. And I can put in the chat this link to like a list of them, and sometimes it's just nice to like ask people and just kind of like get input, especially if you're like not familiar with the area at all. And people will sometimes jump into the comments on Facebook and just give you like turn-by-turn directions. So that's not the most efficient thing, but if you're planning like a big ride in a new place, it can be helpful. Yeah. So it's 1:59. Do we have any more questions from the audience in our last minute? I'm gonna just put this so I can all hear you typing. So if you go to bikeysbay.org/coalition partners, there's a bunch of local groups. So yeah, thanks everybody so much. I'm gonna share my screen again to show the resources page. Just a second here. So yeah, and Leilani, do you have a blog also?
Not related to biking, no.
I
Related to a lot of other things.
So yeah, we have our website at bikeysbay.org/family cycling. There's a ton of links and resources on there for education classes and also like external bike shops. There's a few bike shops in the East Bay that specialize in family bikes. There's one called Spokes Bicycle Lounge, and Blue Heron Bikes are two good ones. And then Binky also repairs and sells bikes. So there's hardknocksbikes.com for Binky, and then Melissa has her blog about like mountain biking and hiking with kids and stuff. So yeah, thank you everybody so much for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. We can't do a round of applause on the webinar, but I will clap for you. So yeah, we will send around an evaluation for folks, and be sure to check out our next 2 workshops in this series. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
All right.